Hi everybody and welcome back to another video. We're going to have a look at word stress. Now this is part 2. There is another video on word stress, part 1. Make sure you watch that first. So let's get started. So first of all, why is word stress important? Now let's look at an example. Here we have two words, desert and dessert. Now the spelling looks very similar. In fact, there's only one S really that is the difference. But if you listen carefully, desert, dessert, the pronunciation is also quite different. First of all, what is the meaning really, in case you don't know? The first word, desert, you can see here in the image, place with a lot of sand, and the second word, dessert, very nice, the last meal in a big course, usually chocolate or cake or ice cream, so very different meaning. Those two words are very different really, but they're both nouns, so they would come in the same place in a sentence. So let's have a look at those two words in more detail, because many times learners mispronounce those. So both of those nouns consist of two syllables. The first word, des-ert, and the second one is dessert. And I've written down the phonemic transcript for you, and I'm going to say the words again, and I want you to listen carefully and see if you can identify the word stress. Which syllable is stressed in each word? Desert, dessert. I hope you were able to hear it. In the first word, desert, the first syllable is stressed. And in the second word, dessert, the second syllable is stressed. And if you find it difficult to remember the two different pronunciations for those very similar looking words, I always say think about dessert being also the last meal. Usually we eat it after the main course, and the last syllable is stressed. So hopefully that helps you. So very different pronunciations, and really what makes the pronunciation so different is the different word stress. And if you have a look at the phonemic transcript, it also impacts the sounds, because in the first word, desert, we really have a schwa sound here. It's not stressed, it's this very, very short sound, desert, But in dessert, the ER spelling is an sound because we stress it. So very different vowel sounds in those two syllables. Here's another example to show you why word stress is so important when you learn English. Here is a word, vegetables. I'm pretty sure you know that word, vegetable. And I've written down the phonemic transcript. The word consists of 3 syllables, vegetable, and the first syllable is stressed, vegetable. However, if you have a careful look, the second E in the spelling really is silent. It's not represented. And this can cause a lot of confusion, and that is why many times students are not sure how to pronounce this word, and they think, is it vegetable or vegetable? Now, when you say vegetable, you notice that we've added an additional syllable. Now the word has 4 syllables and the stress is on the second syllable. However, this is not correct. Yeah, the second E is not represented by a sound, and the pronunciation is vegetable, stress on the first syllable. And really, those two pronunciations, vegetable and vegetable, they're very different. So if you're talking about vegetables, people might not understand what you want to say at all. So getting the word stress right is really important for successful communication in English. Now, the question is, of course, well, what are the rules? How do we know which syllable to stress? Now, there are some rules, and we will go over those in this video, But of course, with everything, I just want to say at the start, there are also many exceptions. Let's have a look at the first rule, and this is for common nouns and adjectives with 2 syllables. And I've given you quite a lot of examples. On the left, you can see all the nouns, and on the right, the adjectives. Now, and all of them have exactly 2 syllables, and I've shown you the syllable boundary with an orange period mark. So we have water, apple, etc., and then little, happy, etc. Now, I will be saying the words, and I want you to listen carefully and see if you can identify the stress. Water, apple, table, garden, little, happy, early, perfect. So hopefully you were able to hear the stress is on the first syllable. Remember what I told you in my first video, word stress always means a syllable is slightly longer, louder, and there's a change in pitch. Usually it means there's a higher pitch. So water and not water, or little and not little. That would really make a big difference, and it would sound very different. So what we can say is the rule is common nouns and adjectives with 2 syllables are usually stressed on the first syllable. And important to remember is usually, because of course there are exceptions. Let's have a look at rule number 2. Verbs with 2 syllables. So again, these are words with 2 syllables, just like the nouns and adjectives before. Have a look, I've written down several verbs for you. And again, I will show you here the syllable boundary. Now let's listen again to the pronunciation so you can tell me where the stress is. Accept, enjoy, improve, respond, believe, avoid. So hopefully you were able to hear that the second syllable is stressed here, not the first. It's exactly the opposite to the group of words that we had before. So here the stress is very often on the second syllable. Accept, not accept. No, that would be wrong. Accept. Stress is on the second syllable. So verbs with 2 syllables are often stressed on the second syllable. Let's have a look at rule number 3. Words that can be nouns and verbs. And there are many, many words in English that can be nouns and verbs with identical spelling. I've just given you 3 here, but there are many, many more. Let's have a look at those. So we have nouns and verbs. And again, first of all, let me show you where the syllable boundary is here. And I'm going to say the nouns first. And I want you to listen again carefully. Can you hear where the stress is? Protest, record, suspect. And now I'm going to read the verbs and listen carefully and see if the stress has changed. Protest, record, suspect. Now, hopefully you were able to hear them, and the stress pattern is not the same. With the nouns, the stress is on the first syllable. Protest, record, suspect. But if these words act as verbs, the stress is on the second syllable. Protest, record, suspect. And there are many, many more. And sometimes, depending on the use of vowels, the words can sound very different from one another. So it's really important because here, the difference in stress makes the word into a different word class, okay? Can transform a word from noun into a verb or vice versa. So nouns are stressed on the first syllable, and verbs are stressed on the second syllable. And I would encourage you to get a whole list of these words so you can learn them. And this is also called often contrastive stress with nouns and verbs. So remember, the spelling has to be identical. And the only difference really is the stress pattern. Let's have a look at rule number 4. And this is regarding prefixes and suffixes. Now, if you don't remember what they are, have a look. I've given you some examples. So prefixes are little bits, really, not full words on their own, little bits that we add to the beginning of words. And this is usually to change the meaning, often to get the opposite meaning. And then suffixes are little bits of letters that we add at the end of words, and very often we do this to change the word class. So maybe we want to change into a noun or an adjective or an adverb. So have a look. I've given you some examples of prefixes and suffixes, but of course there are many more. The question is, are prefixes and suffixes stressed or not? Let's look at an example word for that. Here I've given you a word, surprise. First of all, I've shown you again here the syllable boundary. We have surprise. This is a noun. Now let's see what happens when we add first suffixes and then prefix. First of all, we're going to see where the stress is. Surprise, surprise. So in this noun, the stress is on the last syllable, the second. There are no prefixes and suffixes yet, but we're going to add a suffix. We're going to add the suffix ing, and we're going to form the word surprising, surprising. You can see the word consists of 3 syllables now, but the stress has not changed. It's still in the middle here on pry. The only little thing that has changed, if I go back again, is the syllable boundary, because the z sound was part of the second syllable, but here it actually moved into the third syllable. So it's surprising, but pry has the main stress. Let's add another suffix. Here we're going to add ly, L-Y, and this is to make an adverb out of surprising, the adjective. So surprisingly, surprisingly. You can hear it hopefully. The stress has not changed. It remains on pry, on the second syllable. And now what happens if we add a prefix? I'm going to add the prefix unsurprisingly, unsurprisingly. And unsurprisingly, the stress remains the same, only that now obviously it is the third syllable because we added another syllable with the prefix un to the word. So the word stress remains the same. And as a rule, we can say that prefixes and suffixes are usually not stressed. Of course, sometimes people might misunderstand us and say, did you say surprisingly or unsurprisingly? In that case, of course, you can stress it, but usually in natural speech, we do not stress prefixes and suffixes. Now, but there's one thing we need to add. With suffixes, they can sometimes move the word stress within a word. Have a look at this example here. We have the noun photograph. 3 syllables, photograph, and the stress is on the first syllable, photograph. Now, what happens if we add a suffix to change the meaning of this word? Photograph is an image, it's an object, a thing. But if I want to talk about the person who takes photographs for a living, this person is called a photographer. So we added the suffix er, and this is usually done to achieve like another noun, and usually it refers to a person. And the stress has moved. Now it is not on pho anymore. It has moved to the second syllable, and the word sounds very different. photographer. So stress is on the second syllable. It's not photographer. No, no, no. Some people say that, but it's not correct. Photographer. So remember, this doesn't always happen, but it can happen. Sometimes the stress moves, but it's still not on the suffix. It is within the main root word. Let's have a look at rule number 5, and this is concerning compound nouns. Compound nouns are nouns put together by two nouns to create a new word with a new meaning. I've given you some examples here, and you can see all of those consist of two syllables: web and site, website, teapot, moonlight, bathroom, and many, many more. Now, I will say the words and I want you to listen carefully so you can tell me where the stress is. Website, teapot, moonlight, bathroom. Hopefully you were able to hear the stress, and the stress is on the second syllable, very similarly to the common nouns consisting of two syllables in rule number 1. So the rule is compound nouns are stressed on the first syllable. Let's have a look at rule 6. Now, we don't just have compound nouns in English, we also have compound adjectives. And those are two words put together to create an adjective. Very often that new adjective has a little hyphen in between, that's the little line. Sometimes though, it's also just spelled together as one word. So we have, for example, part-time, homemade, old-fashioned, hardworking. So I'm going to say the words again. Listen out for the stress. Part-time, homemade, old-fashioned, hardworking. Here, the stress is on the second syllable. Part-time, homemade. Those two words consist of only two syllables. The next two adjectives, old-fashioned, hard-working, they consist of three syllables, but the stress is again on the second syllable. And the second syllable is always also the second word. And this is important to remember because the rule really is compound adjectives are stressed on the second syllable, and usually this is the second word. So remember that. And this is different to the common adjectives in rule number 1 that was stressed on the first syllable. So this is different here. Remember, rule 6 is different to rule number 1. Let's have a look at rule number 7, phrasal verbs. Now, phrasal verbs are a huge topic. And if you've been studying English for a while, I'm pretty sure you have met phrasal verbs. Maybe they've driven you crazy. I don't know, but I don't blame you if they have, because they can be tricky. Here are a couple of examples. For example, look up, put off, come in, take back. Phrasal verbs are verbs with a particle, and that particle can be a preposition or an adverb, but the meaning is entirely different now to the original verb. And verbs can be combined with lots of different particles. So here is an example, turn. Turn is a verb in its own right, on its own. Turn just means really to, like if I turn around. But we can combine it with lots of different particles and the meaning changes. So you've got like turn down, turn up, turn into, turn off, turn on, turn over, and even more. I know, you probably think, what is going on with English? I apologize for that. Now, we're not going to talk about the meaning or the grammatical form because, of course, the question is also how do we use them? Can they be separated or not? We will cover this another time. My question is, where is the stress? Is the stress on the verb turn or on the particle? Listen carefully. Turn down, turn up, turn into, turn on, turn off, turn over. Hopefully you were able to hear that the main stress is not on the verb, it is on the particle. And the reason for that is because, of course, the particle makes the big difference. It changes the meaning of the verb turn, so it is very important that the listener hears it. And that is also why we stress the particle more, because it means, hey, this is not just turn, this is turn down. Now, there's something else happening here with the pronunciation that's not to do with stress, but with linking. Just listen again to the first few. Turn down, turn up, turn into. Now, I'm saying them a little bit slower. Usually when we speak fast, it's even faster and you'd hear it even clearer. But what happens is that the last sound in turn, the n, the nasal, it combines with the next word. So really, instead of just saying turn up, it's turn up. So n really joins the particle. Turn up, turn into, turn on, turn off. So just practice this saying this a couple of times and make sure that you stress the particle. So the rule is phrasal verbs are stressed on the particle, always. Let's have a look at rule number 8, our last rule, and this is to do with abbreviations. Abbreviations such as the UK, AI, BC, etc. Those are abbreviations and we use them very often. A lot of things are abbreviated. Again, the question is, where is the word stress? In which letter? The first, the second, the last letter? Listen carefully and tell me. The UK, AI, BC, FYI, WHO, ADHD. Now, hopefully, you've been able to hear that one of the letters is more prominent, and it is usually the last letter. So the UK, not the UK. No, that is not correct. And BC, not BC. No. So all of the abbreviations are usually stressed on the last letter. And of course, we have abbreviations with only 2 letters, but there could be some with 3 or even 4. In every case, it is the last letter that carries the main stress, usually. Now, like I said, for every rule, there are exceptions. And here are some of the words that are often mispronounced, either because they are not following the rules or because of their spelling, people do not quite know how to pronounce and how to stress them. Let's go over them one by one. The first group are all nouns with 2 syllables, but they are all stressed on the second syllable. Event, hotel, police. So they do not follow rule number 1. They're not stressed on the first syllable, but on the second. Then we have 2 words that I often hear my students mispronounce, and I know it's probably because of the spelling. These 2 words have 3 syllables and they're stressed on the first syllable. Comfortable. It is not comfortable. I know the OR is not really pronounced. Comfortable. Vegetable. Again, the second E is not pronounced. Vegetable, not vegetable. And in the last group, we have words that also have 2 syllables. They are stressed on the first syllable, and because of their spelling, sometimes people don't know how to pronounce them and where to put the stress. The first word, August. August, stressed on the first syllable. This is the month of year. And then we have cupboard. Cupboard. Now, this, of course, is a very strange spelling, or better, very strange pronunciation for this spelling. It is not cupboard. No, the board is really pronounced as bud. Cupboard, and stress is on the first syllable. And then we have a verb, purchase. Now, this verb does not follow the rule of most verbs that are two-syllable long and they have the stress on the second syllable. This one, no, it's stressed on the first syllable. Purchase. And of course, the second part looks like chase, but no, it does not have an A sound. It's purchase. I hope this has been helpful. Let's see how much you remember. True or false? Let's do a little test. This word is stressed on the first syllable. True or false? Listen carefully. Lunchtime. Yes, that's true. Lunch is stressed. Lunchtime. True or false? This word is stressed on the second syllable. Modern. Modern. No, that is false. This word is stressed on the first syllable. It is a common adjective with two syllables. True or false? This word is stressed on the second syllable. Receive. Receive. Yes, that's correct. The word is stressed on the second syllable. Receive. True or false? This word is stressed on the third syllable. Disagreement. Disagreement. Yes, that is correct. Disagreement. Agree is the root word and that is stressed on the second syllable. It is a verb. And if we add the prefix dis and the suffix ment, it doesn't change the stress. Disagreement, stress is on the third syllable. I hope this has been helpful. If you have any questions, leave me a comment below.